Well, good morning. I really appreciated those thoughts that Ben shared. Very good thoughts for the day here before us. Because, I'm sure like last night, and as you look at the topics in front of us for today, we're going to talk about some things that are going on in our lives that aren't fun. And they're common to all of us as married people. And so one of the things I really appreciated what Ben brought out is what God desires, as we come to Him, that we come with clean hands and clean hearts. And I don't think Ben was saying it happens once and for all, but it's something that's ongoing, that we keep coming, and God keeps cleaning, keeps working things out of us, working things in us. And the other thing is I find it in my own life, there has been some very not pretty things in my life. And in thinking about dealing with them, it was scary. I had a lot of fear. And one of the things I came to realize as I grew and matured is that I was even scared to open up before God. But to realize that God's seen them anyhow, right? He knows it. And that he's drawing us. He wants the best for us. So, yes, thanks for those thoughts. And just a little exercise here today. I really appreciate the different age group, the group of ages I see here. I see some young people, see some older people. And I don't know what your reason is for coming. It might be that it's just a good time to get away together as a couple. And it could be that you're here because you're looking for some help. You're stuck. But what would be interesting to me is we'll do a quick thing. I'd like to know, as far as kind of get a little bit idea the age difference as far as how many years you've been married. And so if I could just have those of you that have been married 1 year or less, could you stand? Okay. Thank you. How about 5 years or less? Okay, there's more of you. Thank you. How about 10 years or less? Okay. The other group was a little bigger. How about 15 years or less? Okay, a nice amount there. Thank you. Let's go 25 years or less. Okay, thank you. How about 35 years or less? Very good. Thank you. And how about 40 years or less? I'm here. That's my wife. And we're just approaching our 40th year. And how about 45 years or less? Okay. Thank you. That makes me feel a little better. Anybody married longer than 45 years that are here? Please stand. I was a little concerned that as you get older, you keep facing new things. And one thing is eventually sometimes you're the oldest one here. So thank you for being here. And I really like the theme. As I think about the theme side by side, the theme just really grabs me in some way, because it really says it well about the way God designed marriage. And when I see you sitting here, you're sitting side by side. It's not that one of your partners is down on the floor sitting and you're up, you're sitting on the chair. It's not that one of you has your foot on the other, and hopefully it's not inside either. Like your foot is on your spouse. But anyhow, God created us to be side by side as husband and wife. And he created us equal. And and what I mean by equal, like we all were created to bear his image. And we can do that married or unmarried. It doesn't affect us to be able to bear the image of God. So we are created equal. But we know, and in marriage, we have different roles, but our value is the same. And when I think of side by side, our spouse, and I hope you can see that more, and I'm sure you've seen it, and you keep being reminded of this, that our spouse is a real gift to us by God. And so as we approach this topic of unspoken obstacles, and it's exploring obstacles in communication that exist underneath our words. It's things that are operating underneath that actually are hindering our communication. And it's not that there's necessarily we're talking about them, but they're just there and they're operating, and yet they are hindering our communication. And I appreciated Ben's topic tonight. He talked to us about 7 common threads that work against unity. And in a way, you're probably going to keep hearing some about them in our topics. But as he said, hopefully as the weekend unfolds, you'll also be able to receive tools and help. And you see there in your book, the timeline. And thinking about communication, and think about, now I know some of you are married 1 year or less, but I think you can do this too, and you probably can get something out of this. Think about the impact communication had on your marriage to where you are at today. Just this week, my wife and I were driving on a particular road that went past a mountain, kind of where the sparks were kind of getting blown in our relationship. And so we just kind of reflected on that. And, of how significant communication is and continues to be in our marriage, of how that relationship went from where we didn't know each other. We even came from different cultural backgrounds, different communities. And so there was a lot that we had to get to know. And communication had a big part in where we're at today in our relationship. The definition of communication. Communication is the exchange of thoughts, messages, or information as by speech, signals, writing, or behavior. Studies have shown that actual words are a very small percentage of communication when compared to all else that is communicated by face and body language. and wide variation in loudness, pitch, and tone of voice, along with all that is inferred through underlying meanings and connected feelings. Kind of interesting as you look at that definition. And as I was studying about this, about communication, it says a small percentage of our communication is done by our actual words. The rest is by other ways, body language, tone of voice. And it said, like, one place said it's hard to believe, 14%. And then there's other, maybe 30%. But that's worthwhile taking notice, that we are communicating more by our body language, tone of voice, than by the actual words. And I have a visual here just to for us to grasp maybe a little bit more how communication works. When we think of communication, we have a sender. So this sender has to encode, like if he has a thought. So he's going to have to encode that, like put words to it, think it through, put words to it, and then he sends that. And then you also have the decipher, who's a receiver. Now the receiver is the one who needs to now try to understand what the sender is sending. And we as humans have a dilemma with this, because we're not like God. We're not like Jesus. We know when we read the gospel, Jesus could see and read the hearts and minds of people, and we can't. So that is something that's ongoing, and we need to keep that in mind. Like, we might think we understand perfectly, and I'm sure you can say you've been surprised in your relationship how often you thought you understood, and when you come to talk about it and more and get to understand, it was different than what you first thought. And you see underneath there, the conditions of the hearts in both the sender and the receiver greatly impact what is encoded and deciphered. I think that's an important piece to get a hold of. Like, what comes out, my words and even my body language, that comes from the heart. And even how I hear, my heart plays a big part in that, on how I hear what comes at me. And so before I go further, I would just like to draw our attention when we think of marriage and our relationship. I want us to think about it is much bigger than ourselves. Like, what I mean by that, it is it's much bigger than just to have a good marriage. And when you think of what's bigger is God's glory. We want our marriages to glorify Him. And as I have written down there, well, actually, I failed to put some scripture verse here. So if you want to write there, God's glory is our first concern. A scripture verse that I had for that is Colossians 3:17. And that scripture says, "And whatsoever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through Him." So do it as unto Him with His approval in all that we do. So our motivation for growing in communication in our marriage needs to be first of all for God's glory. It matters to God and His kingdom how we relate. This agenda is bigger than a goal of just having a better life together. We want our marriage relationships to bring glory to Christ and His work on the cross for us. Without this greater purpose, good communication in marriage is worthless. And 1 Corinthians 13:1 says, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. All that we do or say should flow out of love for God and love for neighbor, which means this person sitting next to you. And those are the two commandments. The first commandment is loving God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. And the second is love your neighbor. So think of it this way. Our marriage, it's for Him, it's to Him, and for His glory. So obstacle 1 we have here, misunderstanding. Definition for misunderstanding is simply a failure to understand something correctly. And as you notice here, point number 1, to be understood is a universal human desire, is to be understood. And you know how good it feels when somebody cares enough to hear us well and understand. It's a desire, a universal human desire. And I don't know if this gives you any comfort, that misunderstandings are normal for all marriages. And again, our humanness limits us on reading the minds and seeing hearts. Thinking of misunderstanding, recently I was talking with another man, a husband, and he was saying the thing that frustrated him was that he was thinking and trying to process something, and so he would go to his wife and just start sharing, and all of a sudden his wife would start asking him questions and about his thinking, like he's already made a decision when he's just processing. That's an example of misunderstanding. Well, she probably didn't know, right? Because he didn't tell her that he's just processing. But that's a very typical thing that happens in a marriage. Same way, take like the wife. You know, a wife might come to us as husbands, and she just confides in us and talks about her day and the difficult pieces of the day, or something that she's facing that's difficult. And as men, you know, we tend to be these problem solvers, right? And so what is our natural tendency to do? Is let's fix it. Where what she really wanted was just understand me. Understand what I'm going through. You see how misunderstandings are very common. And words aren't even necessarily a part of it. It's something that happens. And of course, some things that keep misunderstandings to grow misunderstandings would be pride. Pride forgets that we don't know everything. It kind of, you know, when pride is operating, it's like it just don't back down. It says, I know. I understand. I'm right. And you can just imagine how misunderstandings will continue to happen. And so we keep wallowing. Pride keeps us wallowing in misunderstandings. And another big one is assumptions. And that's a guess or conclusions without communicating. And assumptions are a common part a misunderstanding. Assumption is assuming something without really knowing. We come to a conclusion by our own thinking without really talking. And that goes on. It can go on. And I had an experience just this week with my wife. So we are setting up house. We are getting ready to do counseling in our house. And so one of the things that's been happening the last 2 months is we have been very focused on getting the house ready. And it's been a good time. Like, I enjoy that with my wife, working together. Well, so we are getting within 1 week away of needing to be ready. And so we are getting things, we're finishing things in the house. And one of the things that we were looking for, one of the last things, was bedroom furniture. And as we were talking of different bedroom furnitures, you know how we have this nice thing called Facebook Marketplace. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I mean, it's interesting. It's a good place to shop. So my point is this. So we were interacting about this bedroom furniture. And I was, just by us looking at different furniture, I would look at one, and there were some things that were going to be that were very important in my mind. Is I want it to be a nice, sturdy bedroom piece of furniture, not something that's particle. And it's okay if you have that, okay. But I wanted something that was sturdy, that would last. And you know, I know these beds, you get in them and things creaking, you know, and shakes, and I just didn't want that, okay? And so as I was looking, and we were talking, okay, and there was some, she would bring some to me and that come up on Facebook, and we look at it and said, ooh, I said, the way that's designed, I don't like it. It don't look sturdy enough, okay? And by the way it comes together, you know. And so we were coming down, there was a few pieces that really looked good, and they looked sturdy. And so we were reaching out to these people. Well, the person that was selling a piece of furniture would not answer. And it's one it just looked good. It looked solid. And so I reached out, and they didn't answer back. That's frustrating. And because I'm limited on time, and it was actually, we were going there in that same town to pick something else up. So I just messaged it again. That way, hopefully that they'll see that somebody messaged, but never came back. And so in the process, this other person was communicating with my wife. And it was one that we looked at, and yes, it looked good. It was another solid piece. It was oak, and it was just built well. And so she started communicating with that one, and this was Wednesday morning, of this week. We went after that piece of furniture. And as I was on the way, I just happened to ask, because some of them sold the mattress with it, mattress and box spring with it and without. So I just, out of making conversation, so what about the mattress? Does it come with it or not? And she said, well, it's a king. And right away, we're looking for a queen. And then she said, yeah, they took a queen and they made it to where they made it that it could be a king. And in my mind, I'm saying, oh my. I needed a plug and play. I didn't need to be fixing something. You know, we're short on time. And I wasn't sure what I was going to find. In my mind, I could start imagining things. And my wife just said, well, just don't worry. And, you know, and I tried not to worry. I said, well, Lord, I guess you have something in mind here. So we went and we got there. And sure enough, the bed was set up. a nice big king mattress sitting on that thing, and a 2x4. I pulled the mattress back, and there was 2 single box springs underneath that, and there's a 2x4 screwed to the headboard that screwed this bed frame up to it. And I look at the other end, which I'm thinking we wanted a footboard too, and there's no place to mount a footboard. And I'm not sure what we're going to do now. Thinking, do we have time for this or not? So anyhow, we started talking, and the person who was selling it said, well, so what had happened is, this man and wife was selling this. It was her mother's and father's furniture, and they both passed away now. And so her father was the one who retrofitted this. She said, well, the footboard is in the basement. And it was a good, solid piece of furniture. So we went down and looked at the footboard. And yep, the footboard was there. And it was designed to have its own rails to fit in there. And then we were sitting there talking and said, well, there are some things over here. There was another bed here, and we go over there. And lo and behold, here are some nice, solid metal rails with the same grain that the headboard and footboard were made out of. So that relieved me a little bit. And then we were looking a little more, and here they had also the metal rail to go across. So, long story short, we ended up with a bed that I didn't have to retrofit. And what was interesting in that is we reflected about that. We talked about that some more, about how that went. And I was saying how, like, I would thought that I was communicating to her that what we wanted, something that was sturdy, a plug and play, by just us looking, by us looking together. Like, I didn't put words to it. Say, now, I didn't actually say, I want something plug and play. Like, I use that term here, but I didn't use those words to her. But she knew I wanted something sturdy. But I thought I had conveyed that idea because we decided not to go with some. You follow my thinking? So this misunderstanding was going on. I mean, it turned out well, but it was going on underneath. And so as we were talking some more about that, is that she said that she actually did know. She got that idea that I wanted something sturdy. And she knew in her mind that she knew that it was retrofitted. I didn't. That was a piece that was missing. So she knew me, that our time was in a crunch, okay? That if she told me that it was retrofitted, I would ask for more information. And it would take much more time, but we didn't have. Now, at one time, that would have really bothered me. She withheld information from me that I needed. But really, when I looked down underneath it, we were both together on this. We both wanted to save time. We both did want a good, solid piece of furniture. And she had in mind, she knows me, that to retrofit something is not out of my field. Like, to her, she said, well, I'm sure he can handle that. But yes, I could handle, but my time was a crunch, okay? So hope that story was helpful to you. It's a little long. But anyhow, this misunderstanding, it can go on. And so this whole thing of assumptions, that's a big one. And I see that happen a lot, and not just in marriage relationship, church relationship. People assume things about one another, and especially when you assume motives of one another. That's very harmful. And we trample on each other that way. And when you think of misunderstanding, some situations for extra caution. Now, what I mean by extra caution, these are situations where misunderstandings are more likely to happen when there's tension. You know, when there's tension going on in the relationship, and when there's distance. Anytime there's distance in your relationship, be aware. It's fertile ground for misunderstandings or distress. And you have sickness, tiredness. Be aware of those things. Another thing that's unique to husbands and then unique to wives, I have them here. 8, unique to husbands, are prone to doubt our wives' respect. Like, that's something that we as men are prone just to doubt. And if we let that thing consume us, it can shape how we hear our wives. And the same way for a wife, unique to wives, they're prone to doubt a husband's love. And so, how to overcome that is to affirm each other. Okay, going down to obstacle number 2. We have unresolved conflicts. These are some real big areas of where if they're unresolved, things that are operating underneath, it's just really hard to work through things if there's conflicts. And sometimes there's some long past ones that have never been resolved, and they're still there. And they actually are underneath working against good communication. Because we have this thing, we're not sure where the other one's at. We're not sure how they're going to respond. We have ongoing conflicts that are results of unwilling to own my part in a conflict, or we might do the silent treatment. This whole thing of pride comes up again that can really hit at us. So just avoiding admitting where I'm wrong, where I failed. And then also it'll shift blame. That really goes against communication. Not owning what's mine to own. Can create some real barriers. And pride is often at the root of anger and bitterness and unforgiveness. Another thing is clamming up. I'm not sure if any of you experienced that. And that clamming up is a little different than the silent treatment. It's more of clamming up from your spouse's attacks. What are they going to say? What are they going to think? And it's actually putting our spouse's opinion of who I am, putting more value on that than on what God says about who I am. And I think that's an important one to get a hold of. You'll hear some more about that. Even if I fail, that doesn't change my value. And it's good to get a hold of that. And so courage and freedom, as it says here, I've written down here, results when living from a God-given identity. It's this idea that, look, as I face this thing, God has me. He's with me. He'll go with me. I can trust him. And of course, practice overcomes fear. Unsure in our leadership role as husband. Now we're going to hear some more on this. I'm looking forward to Tom's topic here later today. But this was a big one for me, and I'm sure that most of us men deal with this. Like, what is our leadership role? And I know from a young man, this was kind of a big thing for me to get a hold of, because I heard that a husband is to be the leader, and that's right. He is given that role as a leader. But then what did that mean? It meant that a good leader would not let his wife run over top of him. And a good leader is one who makes the decisions. Now, Ben talked about this some last night. And that really caused me a lot of problems. And you can imagine how it made my wife feel. That I needed to be the one making the decision. I needed to be the leader. I needed to wear the pants. And but it was so freeing to realize that no, I didn't have to know everything. That my wife is my helper. And she can help me make decisions. Actually, her input should matter much to me as a husband in making decisions. And so my wife is a God-given helper, and we as husbands don't have to carry the whole load. That's not God's design, that we carry the whole load. He's with us, and our wife is there to help us. So we also have conflict types. We have small surface issues that can kind of irk us, or they're there, and it can be just habits, different ways of doing things. We have a few things in our marriage that kind of keep coming up, but we kind of talk about them and joke about them. There's somehow my wife, to see things on a desk, papers that are laying there, it somehow messes with her mind. It's like these things need to be put away. And so, but then she goes to start moving. I say, no, wait a minute. That's important paper. But I learned to value that, because that was good for me, to be more organized. And then for her, I can be and I'll wake up at night and I'll go walking into the bathroom and I'll stumble over some Crocs. And, to me, there's a place for those, right? They shouldn't be in the floor where you stumble over them. You see that? There can be small surface issues. And there can be some material disputes. And Ben touched on some of these. Things that involve money. Material things, there are things that you can feel and touch. I mean, things that you're actually working with. Money, how you spend money. He talked some on managing money. We even have food. That can be a big thing. One person come into a marriage and it's fine to go out to eat. The next person comes, the spouse, the other one says, no, that's a very unwise way to use money. So you have those kind of things that can be there, that they just kind of keep working underneath and work against good communication. And hurtful things said or done to the other. You have social things of spending more time with people than with your spouse. You can have church, differences in ideas about church. You can have educational differences that, some come from cultures where 8th grade is fine. Others come from cultures, no, you need to go through 12th grade and graduate. Some of those things can come into the marriage and that need to be worked through. And don't see them, as you see over there, we'll see our differences as blessings or or fuel for conflict. Will we see our differences as blessings? And I think that's a really good way to think. Our differences are actually a blessing to us, not a curse. Differences of viewpoints, regular work versus kingdom work. This is a big one for me. Because for a man, what do we do? What do we do with most of our time? Aren't we working? And somehow this was in my younger years, and I would hear this. It seemed like there was more value put on going out serving than what it was going to work. And that messes with us. You know, what we need to come to grips with is that you working and providing is kingdom work. And then you have the thing of strict versus lenient in parenting. Yeah, I can identify with that, where one parent is often strict, where it's no question what needs to happen here, you know, and it doesn't take long. This, boom, 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 you do this, that settles it. And the other one says, no, wait a minute, that's pretty harsh. And you need both of those, right? A competitive or perfectionist spirit is another one. Like, I have to have the last word. I have to always be right, or there's only one right way to do something. And the other thing here I have at the end, deciding to disregard an unresolved conflict. That will continue to work against you in your marriage. Then we have this obstacle 3, the differences in communication style. See, I'm going to have to speed up here. This is a really interesting one, and it's fun as I do marriage counseling. You know, oftentimes the one spouse will be one way and the other spouse will be the other way, an internal processor or an external processor. And and it's interesting to watch that. And when my wife and I talked about this some years ago, and I was talking about to her, we were talking about, you know, she's just quick with her words. And, you know, here I am, I'm an internal processor, and I spend a lot of time on putting words to my thoughts. And as soon as I get them out, boy, she can quickly come with something else. And I'm, you know, either I think I got to rethink it again. And she really didn't mean anything about it. And when we were talking this thing through, I was asking her, now, can you hear your word before you say them? And like, do you understand how they're going to sound? And she said, what? I said, I don't even think about how they how they sound. Now, you know what I mean by that. That didn't consume her at all. It's like, and I couldn't hardly grasp that. I said, how could you say words that you don't think about or know how they're going to sound when they come out? That was interesting to get a hold of. But you know how you hear this thing, opposites attract? That's the one thing that attracted me to her. She seemed to be this outgoing person, and I liked that. And to me, it was a blessing. But when into marriage, there's points where I felt it was a curse. But, you know, it has really been a blessing to me, though, because I have learned to actually put words to my thoughts. And it's very helpful. And I guess it's helpful when you have to have a topic. And so then we have the other obstacle. This is another really big one that can go on underneath. And that's the hiddenness and privacy. You know, in marriage, God has joined us together as one. We are one. And when it's a union that is so close that, yeah, you might be able to hide something, but usually one of the partner will be able to have a sense that there's something not quite right. What is going on? And so this relationship is inclusive, not exclusive. So it works against communication if I am going to be exclusive. Now we know there's different motivations for privacy. I don't expect my wife to share details of other women, that are private to them. That's not mine. I don't need to know that. And it works the same way with men. There's things that when we share as men, our wives don't have to know. But the spirit of independence is destructive in deciding to live a separate life. Work at trying to keep your life together. Do it together. And then we have the other thing is hidden sin. Proverbs 28, 13 and 14 says, "He that covereth his sins shall not prosper, but whoso confesseth and forsaketh them shall have mercy. Happy is the man that feareth always, but he that hardeneth his heart shall fall into mischief." When you have hidden sin, when I'm living in that sin, it is a lot of conflict going on inside. And it affects the way I do life, the way I relate with my spouse. Just that alone. And not anything, there's a critical spirit that comes out of that. Of being so critical about others, even about my spouse. And communication is badly hindered. And it's a shame to Christ's name. So, hidden sin is one of those things that can go on underneath and be very destructive to your relationship. And we have obstacle 5, focuses elsewhere. And we know that genders focus differently. Men, we seem to be gifted with this thing as far as, we can go from one room to another room. It's like our brains are like rooms, okay? Our minds are like rooms, and so we can leave one room and go to the next room. And so what can happen is how it can affect our listening is we try to stay in that one room while we're, trying to be in another room. And it's like we can be sitting there, I'm focused on something else, but my wife is saying something, and so I'm trying to, but I'm not really focused. I'm still in that other room. So we focus differently. And a woman, it seems like she can have a lot of doors open at once, and just go back and forth, and even in that she can, form a conclusion or come to a decision on what should be done, just out of going from one room to the next. But if you'd ask her, well, how did you come to that? Well, I guess it's because it's right. But why is it right? And so it might be hard for her to put some of that together. And where, the man can help that. You go back through and okay, let's look at this a little more, and can actually help think through. And because we can tend to we are able to focus and bring balance to that. So let's go down a list of the things that hinder focus. We have environment. Think about what's going on. Conflict. In conflict, one of the things that often happens is rather than us focusing on what is the other person saying, we're more focused on how I am going to answer. Okay? We're trying to form our next response rather than trying to understand what our spouse is really saying and understand them. Do you understand that? Okay? So, conflicts puts our feelings in the forefront. It's pulling focus off of good, solid thinking. Another thing that hinders focus is busyness. Being in a hurry, pressures from schedule, and even a personal desire for rest. or recreation. I'm just ready to get, I'd like to go out and have some recreation where I can just get away and process or just have some downtime. Visiting with friends. The phone is another one. I'm sure we're all aware of that, how phones can hinder our focus. So this, in closing here, is taken from a talk I listened from Tim Keller. I thought he said it well. God uses marriage to show you who you are and show you the depth of your sin and change you to be more like Christ. And I guess I thought he put that quite well. He uses marriage to show us who we are and the depth of our sin. And I would say our need of him. And we need Christ. We need his help. And he's there to help us. The Lord bless you.